Our next question is there a generational divide? And I want to interject this. This is something we all talked about before we sat down to do this. I thought it was important at the outset to mention that we are all originally Boston sports fans and from this region. There is a sense of, on all of our parts, that we don't want to sit in judgment of our fan bases. We don't want to sit in judgment of our consumers. We don't want to say, well, they're like this, because we are, in some ways, on the other side of the moat. So we don't know what it's like to pay for every ticket. We don't know what it's like to be at the mercy of any of us to get the information. So that's important to just underscore as we do this exercise. We do this with respect to you guys for consuming our stuff and for keeping us honest. Not when you dinks. And for also understanding that we are trying to keep it as accurate, fun, and informative as we possibly can, because you are the greatest sports fans in America. But that generational divide you mentioned, John, is fascinating because it also tracks, interestingly, along the metamorphosis of Massachusetts. You know, in the late 70s, early 80s, 90s, we were hit by strife, unemployment. The whole country was. The 80s, something called the Massachusetts Miracle, and technology on 128 rose. Well, we were still, my parents bought a house in Pembroke, Massachusetts for $17,000 in 1967. And when they sold it in 1985, I think it was $149,000. Exponential improvement. You're not going to find a house in Pembroke for $149,000 now. Again, inflation has happened everywhere. But we were the Athens of America. We were not the Monte Carlo. We were not the Dubai. And in many ways, we've changed into a much more cosmopolitan city than we were previously. So there is a generational divide between Patriots fans who brag about watching the Patriots at Fenway Park and the ones who are only in the red seats at Gillette Stadium and happen to be 40 years old because they moved here to go to college at MIT, settled in, and have been wildly successful. They have nothing in common with the guy from Billerica or Kingston. So there is a generational divide.
I'll just say very quickly, I had a friend in college, born and raised Bostonian, humongous Red Sox fan, absolutely had his heart ripped out in 86, had his heart ripped out in 95, any year that you can come up with, bad 2003. And he said to me, and he meant it, there's a part of me that hopes they never win, because it really is all about that chase. And once you've caught it, it's gone. You can never recreate that. And I mentioned this to a couple other people, and they're like, oh, he's not a real fan. He's an idiot. But it's like, if you lived it, you kind of get it. You kind of get that it was really about just that pursuit, that never ending, how are we going to get there? And if we fall short, then we're going to go back at it again next year. And so you obviously don't have that with a generation of fans now. And I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing, because we were pretty fatalistic about lots of stuff. But anyway, that's just something to me that has changed. You can never imagine a fan now rooting against their team. Well, I guess you can, because people are rooting against the Red Sox, but not if they're on the cusp of a title.
Rooting against is a little different than what I think was part of, and even I remember this, before the Red Sox won, was part of your identity as a Red Sox fan was being critical of the team and really, disliking moves that they made or couldn't make or wouldn't make, and getting worked up about it. And man, if they had only done this and that, what are they thinking? And they need to make a change here and they need to make a change there. And you just sort of got into that mode. And it was part of how you experienced your team. So I wouldn't necessarily put myself in the camp of your friend, John, but I do understand that part of it, that has gone away. I also think there are people like generationally from the same time period, Chris, that also consume the teams differently, right? Like I did, this is completely anecdotal, but I think it was 2 days ago on 98.5 The Sports Hub, they're bashing the Patriots and are the Patriots ready for the season? And what's Bill Belichick doing? and somebody who's a Patriots fan since 1952 calls in and says, we won for 20 years. That was enough. It was enough. Okay. They'll figure it out. They'll be okay. We had it really good here for a long time. And he's probably speaking for a decent percentage of people out there that are like him, who saw the team suck for a long time and then had the highest of highs for a long time. And they're saying, why do I really want to complain about this team?
The guy's still full from the filet mignon. He still has the filet mignon in the system.
Exactly.
How long would our teams have to be bad before we just started to appreciate even the little stuff, Tom? Is that even possible now?
6 years. I mean, we keep getting the dopamine hit every 4 years from all of them, whether it's an Eastern Conference Finals appearance or, I do remember very clearly in about 1992 when, that has to be too late. Maybe it was 92. Yeah, it was 92 or 91. Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, and the San Francisco 49ers coming to Foxborough. And that doesn't happen all the time, every 4 years, every 8 years, actually. And they were coming to Foxborough. And the previous time they had come, I was probably 17. Now I was 21, 22. And just so friggin' excited. And just thinking to myself, imagine being a fan of a team like that. It's just so good. Win Super Bowls. It's so much fun. Oh, my God, that must be incredible. And just being excited to see Jerry Rice and Joe Montana and the San Francisco 49ers on the field at Gillette Stadium. That divide is wild because not only did I watch the 49ers under Bill Walsh, I watched Tack on Lombardi's Packers while you're at it. I saw the equivalent and covered the equivalent here. I will say this about the generational divide too. My kids don't sit down in front of SportsCenter or NBC Sports Boston on television and consume it there. Everything's on their phone. That generational divide is so interesting to watch because they have much more information in their brains because they scroll through it more quickly than we do. Got to get home, turn on the TV, see what's up. Got to get in the car, turn on the radio, hear what's going on. For those folks who are not on Twitter, which I would imagine a lot of the folks who, like me, were born between 65 and 75 are not.
Even as one of the olds that you're talking about there, 65 to 75, even the way as a reporter that I consume all this stuff has changed. So there are times when I say, if I'm doing it this way, like when I canceled my subscription to the Boston Globe because it was cluttering up the house, that's when I knew that newspapers were dying. It's the same kind of thing now. You understand, like, I will watch the games mostly, but if I miss one, I know that I can pick up the 10-minute House of Highlights or whatever the next morning, or John Boy for baseball or whoever. And beyond that, to go back to something you said earlier, I'm an NBA fan. If I want to watch Luka highlights or John Morant highlights or whoever, I can go do that, for as long as I would like. The very next day. And so these are guys that you would have only seen on a game of the week when we were kids, or you would have only seen in the finals, or maybe on a highlight clip or the All-Star game, that kind of thing. Now they're at your fingertips every second of every day, and that just changes things. It's so much more easily digestible and consumable.
And I think superstars matter, right? Like we were spoiled to have Brady and Ortiz and KG, and like everything became appointment television, and maybe it doesn't quite feel that way right now. And that's weird for me to say because like I sometimes have to step back and remind myself how big Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are. But you're going to mention Luka and Giannis and Embiid and LeBron before you probably get to them in terms of must-watch TV. And so I think part of fandom and how much we want to consume every game around here probably hinges on superstars too. And I say that, and yet my buddy was telling me the other day he didn't want to golf on a Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon because he wanted to get home and walk Mac Jones. So I don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter. Football is different. Football, everyone wants to go watch, but it would help consumption to have these really, really big superstars. And maybe Tatum will get there where every day we want to watch every bit of every game.